مرحبا، معكم الكاتبة رشا بركات، معدة ومقدمة برنامج صالون رشا عبر بودكاست حركة الشبيبة اليافية. صالون رشا رح يكون صالون مفتوح لكل أنواع العناوين المحلية والعالمية واللي أكيد بتفيدنا. اسمعونا على منصات التواصل الاجتماعي والتطبيقات سبوتيفاي، بودبين، جوجل وأبل، وطبعا على الفيسبوك بصفحتي بودكاست حركة الشبيبة اليافية وحركة الشبيبة اليافية. صالون رشا. أهلا وسهلا فيكم أعزائي متابعي ومحبي بودكاست حركة الشبيبة اليافية. أما اليوم بصالوني فهي قراءة لأرتيكل أو مقالة بالإنكليزية، وطبعا أنا هدفي أتوجه للغرب فيها وكذلك لأهلنا بالشتات الغربي وكل العالم عشان نعبر ونحكي ونوصل صوتنا بحقيقة اللي حصل بفلسطين والنكبة، وكيف راحت بيوتنا، كيف تم احتلال أراضينا ودورنا، وكيف تم تهجير أهالينا، وطبعا بأنه كل ما ينشر عكس ذلك هو مزور، وهاي قصصنا الحقيقية. فالارتيكل بتلاقوه طبعا بالجورنال أو المجلة الإنجليزية باسم This Week in Palestine، وهو للسيدة لورا برامكي خوري. طبعا هو الإصدار إيشو يعني 280 بأغسطس 2021. فإذا رح بلش بقراءة المقالة بالإنجليزية، وبعدها طبعا بتمنى أنه ينال اهتمامكم، ويا ريت لو بتشاركونا الجميع لأنه لازم نوصل صوتنا. عنوان المقالة How I Left Jerusalem by لورا برامكي خوري. I was asked to write my story and experience, indeed, the story of my parents when we left Jerusalem, Palestine in April 1948. However, my story does not differ from other stories of the plight of Palestinians who were forced to leave their country, fleeing for their lives and the lives of their children. My story begins on an evening in January 1948 when my grandmother and I were alone at home in Talbiye, an exclusively Palestinian neighborhood. I was studying for my exams or the teacher's training college and wishing I would finish studying so that I could visit my friend who was living nearby. All of a sudden, we heard a menacing voice emanating from a monstrous tank that was completely closed except for two slits, ordering all Arabs in the Talbiye quarter to leave now. We panicked, especially because my parents were not at home at the time and we did not know what to do. Eventually, my parents came home and we had to leave our house that evening and go to my uncle's house in Lower Baqa, another exclusively Palestinian inhabited neighborhood, because the armored tank was relentless and insistent in its driving around and making sure that we would all be scared to stay. That was the second time that we had moved house while still in Jerusalem. I had lived all my life until that fateful year in a house that my father had built near what became known after 1948 as Mandelbaum Gate. My father, Andoni Barramki, was an architect and he owned two houses. The one we were living in until we had to take refuge in the Talbiye quarter because the area became very dangerous due to the Haganah, a Jewish underground movement terrorizing the area and shooting indiscriminately at any passerby. The other house, almost across the street from where we were living, was always rented out and after 1967 became a museum with changing names, currently called Museum on the Seam. And to add insult to injury, the Israeli curators of the museum never acknowledged the fact that the building belonged to my father. All they mentioned was that the house, with its special architectural beauty, was constructed by Mr. Andoni Barramki, omitting by intention the fact that it was owned by Andoni Barramki. However, the situation was getting worse and random shots were becoming an everyday happening. I almost got killed one evening as I was returning home from college when a stray bullet grazed my hair. At first, I thought it was a bird flying over until a man passing by told me how lucky I was, barely missing that bullet. In April of 1948, when everybody was leaving in the wake of the Deir Yassin massacre and no place seemed safe enough, we left our home in Jerusalem, taking nothing with us except some of our clothes, thinking that it was a temporary period. That is why we took refuge in Birzeit, a town north of Jerusalem, so that we would be close by to return when all would be well again. But it was never well again. My family and I never saw again the Jerusalem we knew and had lived in. After living in Gaza, then Beirut, for a few years, we eventually returned to Jerusalem in 1953. What we found was a destroyed city, a city with its soul gone. Our families and friends were no longer there. Our homes were full of bullet holes, all run down and neglected. I mourned for my youth that was lost in Jerusalem. Oh, how I had yearned to be a young adult in Jerusalem after finishing boarding school in 1947. I longed to live all year round in my city, wondering what my life would have been like. I was just about to be on the threshold of a new teenage life, full of expectations, of romance if you like, or just plain living. Palestine was like a beautiful tapestry, with myriad brilliant colors all tightly woven together, with communities living together in harmony. Alas, we came back to a ravished tapestry, all torn, its threads scattered all over the country, indeed, across many countries. My plight, as I mentioned at the beginning of this article, is only from my point of view and what my family and I went through. However, this is nothing compared to the rest of Palestine, to all the villages that were destroyed, their lands taken, their men, women, and children shot at and driven out of their homes at gunpoint, never to return, becoming refugees living in camps up until this day. Becoming refugees living in camps up until this day. Not to mention the indelible trauma that all the families of my parents' generation suffered as they had to leave their homes, their work, and all their achievements behind, as well as their dreams for their children. It was like a huge tsunami that happened and obliterated everything that ever was, except that this tsunami was man-made by evil people with the collaboration of other countries, not least the British, who thought our country was theirs to give away and divide. But of course, the British did this everywhere they ruled. We will never forget, and our stories will continue to be passed on from one generation to the next, and someday justice will prevail. أعزائي متابعي ومحبي بودكاست حركة الشبيبة اليافية، بتمنى يكون هالارتيكل أو هالمقالة بالإنجليزي تكون محط اهتمامكم، وطبعا بدعيكم لنشرها للعالم. قد ما فينا خلينا نعلي صوتنا لنقول ونعبر عن حقيقة ما جرى ببلدنا، بأهالينا، ببيوتنا، بأملاكنا، بهويتنا، وعكس ما يقال ويزور ويشوه فينا. خلينا كلنا نجتمع على كلمة لصالحنا، لصالح شعبنا، لفتح كل التزويرات اللي عم نشهدها واللي عم ينلعب عليها عبر الرأي العام العالمي. وبتمنى إنه هالعمل يكون مفيد لنا، لقضيتنا، ولا يعني بالنسبة للمطالبة بإعادة حقوقنا ببلدنا وهويتنا. طبعا أنا بلقاكم بحلقات جديدة من برنامجي صالون رشا عبر بودكاست حركة الشبيبة اليافية. وطبعا تقدروا تتابعونا، تابعوا كافة برامج بودكاست حركة الشبيبة اليافية عبر التطبيقات والتواصل الاجتماعي مثل فيسبوك، بودبين، سبوتيفاي، أبل وجوجل، وطبعا عبر صفحتي بودكاست حركة الشبيبة اليافية وصفحة حركة الشبيبة اليافية. صالون رشا.